So before we go into down payment programs, I figured it's important to highlight some of the barriers to home ownership. Being obviously a lot of us working in the business know what they are, but just to highlight some of the studies and the data and reports that I've been reading. Credit in terms, access to credit or sufficient credit, for example, and people understanding the terms, and it's not just translation, it's also financial literacy. Having stable employment, obviously last year we saw a dip in the unemployment rates. We saw a huge changes in folks working from home instead of having to commute to their offices, people not having sufficient savings, and discrimination. I don't know if any of you are aware of the lawsuit that occurred against Redfin of the housing advocacy organizations that had a class action lawsuit basically saying Redfin was doing a modern day redlining. So they were picking and choosing which neighborhoods and the scales of the pricing was accusing them of such. It's a really interesting article. Protected classes, we all know a lot of the fair housing laws that passed many decades ago are meant to protect certain classes. And then myths and misperceptions. I think there's a lot of myths out there still about, it being a quick and easy process or about needing 20% down. Things of that nature are really important that hopefully we as realtors and lenders can dispel those myths. This was a graphic taken from AREA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America, the State of America Asia report from 2020. And it's great that they have this information. The data points are actually from a couple years prior, just to note. But this will show you also the list of barriers to home ownership, including the debt to income ratio, employment history, credit history, collateral, insufficient cash, unverifiable information, mortgage insurance was denied, and other. I personally know that a lot of folks still have mattress money. And so that's one of the things, when I think of unverifiable information or other, I really think of a lot of folks who prefer to keep their cash with them instead of in the banks. And that has a lot to do historically with the fact that in many other countries, you cannot trust a lot of the banks and a lot of the institutions. And including here, I know a lot of elderly folks who, went through the Great Depression and they prefer cash over trusting the banks. Some of the solutions for home ownership obviously is taking classes or having first-time homebuyers take classes. Not all programs require it, but I honestly wish that they all did. Down payment programs that we'll speak about today, rezoning city plans, which I won't go into, but we all know that the traditional and historical way in which cities have zoned and planned their plot maps is more so having to do with the fact that it created a lot of sprawl. So having a limitation, for example, on the units or the single family homes being on certain sides of properties. And so there was a lot of articles that I read about the importance of cities rezoning to maximize the density of certain cities and neighborhoods. Some other solutions, translated documents. It's one of my main goals that the Northwest MLS would choose, the top 5 to 10 languages to translate all the documents. It's something that a lot of governments already do, a lot of corporations. And I think it would be to everyone's benefit that those documents for offers are in other languages, in addition to obviously signing the English version. Legislation has passed. There's the American Dream Down Payment Act and a lot of other legislation to allow first-time home buyers to set aside funds from the government for these programs. HUD counselors, as of last year, a lot of the one-on-one counseling that would happen in person from the housing urban development nonprofit agencies throughout the country is now happening virtually and via Zoom, obviously as a result of last year. Student loan forgiveness programs, there's always a lot of bills that come and go. It seems like sometimes they're introduced and sometimes they're in the water, as far as allowing those with student loan debt to have a portion of their debt be forgiven depending on the career that they choose. For example, public service is one that's constantly highlighted. Tax savings, and again, self-employed income calculations. This has been big in the news the past few years because there's a lot of millennials choosing to work for Uber Eats and Amazon and delivery, more of the contractor type jobs that don't have benefits. And when they don't have benefits, and when banks are calculating self-employed income on the net income instead of gross income, then it makes affordability a lot harder to reach. Some of the myths of first-time homebuyers that I hear a lot within the real estate community include, oh, you must work with a lot of FHA buyers. In fact, I can count the number of times on one hand that I've had FHA buyers in the past 6 years. The large majority of my buyers are actually conventional. And another myth is that they're all low income, they don't have any money for down payment, when in fact the large majority of buyers who take our classes have their own down payment. They're just taking the class to, one, explore their options, or two, get the education they need in order to figure out this complicated process of buying a home. A lot of folks might say, oh, first-time home buyers are ignorant, buyers are liars, or they're indecisive. And I hope that we can help dispel a lot of these myths, because a lot of the buyers need information. They need accurate, timely, honest information. And I think that's where we as realtors and lenders can really help dispel these myths and help educate our buyers. This is a report from the National Association of Realtors, first-time home buyers. The most recent data they have is from 2018. It gives you a synopsis of what first-time home buyers look like, their demographics and such. And so what's interesting down here, the reasons to purchase a home is not what some of us would think as far as financial security, establishing a household, or a change in family situations such as marriage, birth, child, or divorce. It's really the desire to own. So 66% of these first-time home buyers in 2018 said that just the mere wish of wanting to own a home was the main reason that they decided to buy. And obviously we're seeing a big shift in some of this data, so it definitely looks different in 2020, for example, where 2018 convenience to job was an important factor. More than 60% of the buyers said that. However, we know from all the other data that came out in 2020 that we're seeing an influx of buyers who used to prefer the cities now wanting to go the outskirts in the neighborhoods. And then again, more data. I'm not going to bore you by reading every bullet point here, but I can definitely send the PowerPoint to Jennifer to share with folks. And this just gives the data from ARIA, breaking down the different subgroups, both ethnically and racially. So some of the data as far as buyers profile, again, this is from ARIA, the home ownership rate of several Asian ethnic and racial groups. What's interesting down here is the Samoan, Nepalese, and Micronesian populations have a much lower rate of home ownership than, say, the Taiwanese, Vietnamese, or Japanese, or even just on the national rate of 63.9%. So again, I'll share this PowerPoint. I have the links to all the data in case anybody's interested. This is data relevant to, I believe, MBA Pierce members. This comes from the NAHREP State of Hispanic Homeownership Report. It breaks down the different construction occupations, the percentage of the workforce that comes from the immigrant population, Hispanic population, the percentage of those without a high school diploma, and then the labor shortages. Obviously, these are really high rates of labor shortages that have to do with the influencing factors, I think, of hiring subcontractors and things of that nature. So now to the nitty-gritty, the overview of programs. There are programs that offer down payment assistance anywhere from $7,500 up to $90,000. A lot of people don't realize that there are multiple layers of programs that buyers can access, and you don't always have to be a first-time home buyer. So there's a difference between these amounts. Some come in grants, and most of them come as silent second mortgages or second mortgage loans. There are tax saving benefits, but there's also, if it's a grant, then the buyers have to count it as income for the subsequent year. Some categories of the buyer types, as far as banks targeting these populations for the down payment assistance programs, some of them target tech companies, medical employees, universities. Some you have to be a first-time home buyer, and some being a first-time home buyer just means not owning anything under title in the past 3 years. So the definition is not all-encompassing. Teachers, credit union members, DACA, et cetera, et cetera. So the Washington State Housing Finance Commission is by far the most popular and well-known program through the state, because realtors and lenders who use this program, we had to have gone through an 8-hour certification process to teach this program and offer it. There's no payments until the buyers refinance, sell, or rent out their home, and they offer 5% in down payment assistance and or closing costs. But again, this can work in conjunction with some of the other programs like City of Seattle, City of Tacoma. Nano and I had a buyer last month who bought a condo in Fremont, Seattle, and he got something like 20 to 30% down from having taken our class and going through the program. Allows him access to these funds. Income max 145,000, credit score minimum 620, and the class is a 5-hour class that's offered online. People can take it at their own pace, or they can take it live via Zoom. And again, noting that some of the programs like HouseKey require you to be a first-time home buyer, and Home Advantage does not require you to be a first-time home buyer. But there are a select number of lenders and loan officers who can offer this program. And DACA buyers can apply with select lenders. Bank of America grant, they can offer 3% or $10,000 in addition to the $7,500 towards closing costs. So $10,000 towards down payment, $7,500 towards that. It is taxable income. They base this grant on low to moderate income neighborhoods on the census tract. And so it's not, they don't have to be a first-time home buyer. They just have to go through a home buyer class online, and they can't have property currently under title. So maybe they bought it a long time ago, or lost their home, or decided to rent for a while, and they can't have any property currently under title. And just a little note that in 2 years, they lent $5 billion total for buyers using these programs. ECU has a program where you can get up to $7,500 as a grant. You don't have to pay it back. Minimum credit score 660, down payment 3 to 5%, and at least one borrow should be first-time home buyer, and it has to be your primary residence. They do have to take a first-time home buyer framework online, and they need to show 2 months of reserves. The PAIRS, the Prime Alliance Real Estate Services, a lot of the Berkshire agents were familiar with this program. It is housed within our Berkshire West Seattle office, and it's actually for both home buyers and homeowners who want to sell. So both sellers and buyers can access this through a network realtor. We get charged as we pay a referral fee, which is worth the business, just like most other affinity programs. And so PAIRS can help home buyers set up utilities, entertainment, home security. And this is not towards down payment or closing costs. This is 20% cash rewards after closing where applicable throughout the country. City of Seattle, as I mentioned earlier, we had a buyer that bought in Fremont a nice 1-bedroom condo, but he wouldn't have been able to access or do that without the City of Seattle funds and the State Housing Finance Commission. And one-on-one housing counseling is required through HomeSite. They do all their counseling via Zoom these days, or Parkview services. And maximum purchase price is $450 in the city Seattle limits. Obviously, it's hard to find a single family home at that price range, so I would think that it's targeting more the condos or the folks who want to buy condos. City of Tacoma and Pierce also has a program, $20,000 in down payment assistance. It's no payments until you sell, refi, similar to the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. And buyers must take that 5-hour online course and do a one-on-one pre-purchase counseling session. They have a whole list of agencies that are approved to provide that one-on-one counseling. And that's a wrap. That's about it.